to the Starting Over Stronger show, where you'll find help and hope for your divorce survival and recovery. Divorce well, live well.
Taking responsibility for your own life and your own well-being and not being a bag in the wind, not letting life happen to you, but you are navigating life the way you want it to go, even in those tough times.
Hey guys, welcome back to Starting Over Stronger, Divorce Survival and Recovery. Today, Janna Fox, CEO and co-founder of Rescore, is joining us to talk about how divorce can affect your credit and why that is important. Janna has been in the credit repair industry for 8 years. She started as a credit advisor and was quickly promoted to an account executive, later becoming the director of business development. As such, she has been instrumental in facilitating and sustaining relationships with over 7,000 referral partners across the U.S., helping over 40,000 clients improve their credit and buying power. And being a single mother herself, she's had to reestablish her own financial well-being and credit along with her life after a divorce several years ago. And because of this, she has a deep passion for helping others do the same. She understands the struggles and hardships that come along with having little or no credit, especially when rebuilding after a divorce. And her main focuses at Rescore are educating referral partners and clients, tracking new trends, maintaining relationships with referral partners across the U.S., and overseeing relationships with clients here locally. Outside of work, Janna loves raising her 5 children, music, wine, coffee, quotes, shoes, and reading and writing. So hello, Janna. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I really appreciate this opportunity.
No problem. We are glad to have you. This is a topic that I hope people don't just breeze past thinking they don't care because it sounds boring, because it really is one of the more important things that we're going to talk about, and we'll get into a little bit why here real quickly. I always like to start the conversation by giving the listeners a little personal insight into the experts they hear on the show. Of course, we just mentioned that you're passionate about serving people, at least in part as a result of your own personal divorce survival and recovery, which is so awesome. As someone who shares that exact same passion with you, except in the area of real estate and divorce coaching, I appreciate that very much. Really, I do. I think that it is awesome, and I thank you for your generosity and your care. I think there just simply are not enough of us on the front lines for those facing divorce. A lot of times divorce is made more complicated and holds more risks because people are going it alone, expecting, as so many do, for their attorneys to know everything about everything, and they just don't. It's kind of an unfair expectation, really, and we may not even realize we're clinging to it for dear life, not knowing there's other help out there. But attorneys will be the first to tell you their expertise is legal, not credit, not financial, not real estate, and certainly not emotional support. And so I want to help those listening today to be able to fully relate to what you have to share. So I would like to ask you how divorce has profoundly affected your life.
So I think anyone that's gone through a divorce, they understand the emotional toll that you go through. And it's literally like a death. I think I read, it was like a little quote somewhere several years ago, but it said something about divorce is so much like a death, just no one brings you a cash roll, which is so true. And so just the emotional toll that you undergo and just trying to make heads and tails of just daily life, just simple, typical decisions that you make day in and day out while you're going through that process or the beginning stages of it is very difficult. So then trying to maintain the mindset of your financial future is usually way on the back burner. So I know myself, when I went through my divorce, I was so incredibly naive. I mean, it's kind of funny because it's been 10 years now to look back at the difference of who I was and who I am. And maybe not better or worse, but not near as naive as I used to be. I think I had this very false sense that if, maybe like the Disney cartoons, if you're a good guy, you're going to win. If you're a bad guy, you're not. And in my mind, I was the good guy. Aren't we all? I think we all do that. It really was a strained relationship. And so in my mind, because I was quote unquote the good guy or the mom who stayed home with her kids, then not that I'm winning something or that in a divorce anyone wins, but I think I had a very false security that everything was going to end up okay. And that the judge and the attorneys would see the heart that I had or how hard I had tried for 15 years, how good of a mother I was. And then going through the actual reality of, number one, the cost. Number two is it's not a good guy and a bad guy situation at all. It is people that don't know you basically making decisions about your livelihood and your children's livelihood, and just not being prepared. I was not financially prepared at all. So it really gave me this passion to help other people and to maybe help them navigate through the unknowns. Because if you don't even know the questions to ask, it's not like you're thinking, oh, I wonder if this is going to happen. You don't even know what questions to ask or what you're getting ready to walk into. And it can sometimes become a war, even with the best intentions. So I think that that's the main thing for me, is that I really learned the good guy and bad guy thing is a very juvenile, naive way to think of things. Being prepared is one of the, I think, most important things for anyone considering divorce or going through divorce to do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It means a lot to me, and I know that it will help our listeners. For you to share with such vulnerability, it's rare, and I think that knowing the personal side of us actually helps listeners appreciate what we have to say and what we have to share with them all the more. So thank you again. The title of the show today is "The Number One Asset in Your Divorce is Not the House, It's Your Credit Score," and here's why. Credit preservation and repair during divorce is incredibly important. And sadly, it is also overlooked in the vast majority of cases. Listeners, did you know your credit score is now checked in order to apply for many new utility services? And that you cannot buy a home, and in some cases even rent a home, if your credit score is not at an acceptable level? Where are you going to live after your divorce if you have no credit or bad credit as a result of decisions made during your divorce, whether or not you had any control over those decisions? Or during your divorce because of factors that may greatly affect your credit that you don't even know about or understand? Whether you keep the marital house or sell it during the divorce, you really need to protect your credit score and your financial future. What we're going to get into are some of the ways you can do that. But first, I just want you to be aware that if you should need to contact a real estate professional, there are two very important criteria to base that decision on. Your sister or friend who sells a few homes a year may not be your best resource for many reasons. The two most important factors are time and knowledge. And I will say, as an RCSD realtor, I have gratefully studied under Harvard Law graduate, Stanford professor Kelly Lease Murray, JD. And the reason I flew to California for her training is because I know people are going through divorce and they're counting on professionals to help them make sense of everything happening. And through my own personal experience and that of many of the women that I have coached through divorce, I have come to understand and realize that many important protections are being completely overlooked. So partnering with a couple, and sometimes even just one party in the divorce, and their lawyer during discovery, and if at all possible before mediation. My training has prepared me to bring proven strategies to help bridge known gaps that help to avoid the expensive and sometimes permanent consequences of making uninformed decisions about your real estate. My goals are simple. I want to protect your credit score, hence why we're talking today about credit, and preserve your homeownership eligibility. If you decide, based on the additional data that I provide, that the marital home needs to be sold, I do hope to have earned your trust with the listing of the home and the ability to get the highest price possible for it, as well as the honor of assisting you in finding a new, more affordable home for your fresh start. And, my pre-divorce house homework is free regardless of whether that is your decision. I just want what is best for you and your family. So I do like to provide those extra services before to make sure that the right decision is being made. What most people don't know going in is that property division is permanent. And there are a handful of issues that can greatly and unfortunately insidiously affect the value and equity of the home. That being the case, when would you want to find out if there's a lien on the home, if there's a home equity line of credit that you didn't know about, if there's an insurance claim filed that you weren't made privy to, or if there are significant condition issues in the home that might affect your decision to keep it, or at the very least, will reduce the equity or become unbearable burdens financially if you keep the house. What if you don't get mortgage guidance before you finalize your divorce, but you agree or you're ordered by the judge to refinance the house in your own name? And what if you then don't qualify for that refi with your income alone? Now, you're in contempt of court. How will that get resolved? Will there be a foreclosure, a bankruptcy, a short sale, as in getting way less for the house than it's worth? As a divorce coach and RCSD realtor, I partner with attorneys who understand the significance of these issues for their clients, and they want to go the extra mile to be sure they are meeting their fiduciary duty to assist clients in making fully informed decisions about every aspect of their property division, because it is permanent. You cannot go back if something devastating is revealed after the fact. Now is the time that you need to surround yourself with a comprehensive team of professional referrals and resources that I have designed to offer you at this vulnerable time to help ensure that every decision you make is fully informed. And Janna is one of those resources when it comes to protecting and, if necessary, rebuilding your credit. Janna, I'm sure you would agree, the challenge for you and I is getting connected with people when they need us instead of after. It is such a devastating time, and people are hurting so much, they don't even realize how much their overwhelm is affecting their decision making. They think they're fine, they think their attorney's handling everything, and their family and friends may surround them with care and concern, but not really know how to help them. So we just want people to know there's someone on their side to help them come out of this mess as intact as possible financially. And yes, that is possible. And so on that note, what I thought would be good to do to start is by giving the listeners a crash course in credit. So I'm going to ask you a series of short questions and let you explore those as you wish to help listeners to understand what credit is, how it works, and what they can do about it. So first of all, what determines someone's credit score?
That's a great question. So the main thing that determines someone's credit score, and this is going to sound simple, but it's what's being reported on that credit report. So in saying that, what that means is if you have anything negative on there, it's going to obviously negatively impact that credit score where it's quite a bit lower. So you have to look at credit kind of like a teeter-totter. So if you have some positive lines of credit, that's obviously going to be reported, and that's great. But if you have negative items on your credit report, and when I say negative items, I'm talking about collections, repossessions, foreclosures, charge-offs, things like that. And then that's really going to lower those scores. So the things that's going to determine that score is how well you're maintaining the trade lines that you have. Do you have high credit card balances? Do you have enough trade lines? And then what's negative and what's positive on there.
Okay. What would you say would be some of the main things that lower your credit score or hurt it?
So the main things that's going to lower credit scores is going to be high balances on credit cards. You always want to make sure that you're maintaining your credit card balances at 30% of the limit. That's really important. And I would even say, even above and beyond that, about 30 to 60 days before anyone goes in to apply for a loan, the great way to manipulate a FICO score in a positive direction is to pay down those credit cards as low as possible. That's a great way to give yourself a boost. And actually, a lot of people don't know the sweet spot for a credit card balance versus a limit is 3 to 5%. And I'm not saying 35%, 3 to 5%. That's going to give you the most points possible. Yeah. Also,
that was actually going to be one of my next questions.
Oh, well, there you go.
Is it better to have no, like to pay it off totally, or is it better to leave a little bit on there? So that answers.
Yeah. And you know what? And I'm glad you just said that, Annie, because the other thing that so many times happens is that someone thinks that they're doing a positive thing for their credit. So they'll actually pay off their credit cards completely to a zero balance, and then they close them out. That's not a great idea, especially now we're talking about divorce. So we'll kind of get into that in just a second. But if it's your own credit card and we've established our own credit, you want to make sure that you're maintaining those credit cards. And the older the credit card, the lower the balance, the better your FICO scores. Awesome. Another thing that lowers credit scores is just one simple 30-day late can damage a score 80 to 100 points. And I'm not being dramatic. I see it all the time. And a lot of people don't understand that. A 30-day late is absolutely detrimental to your FICO scores. Collections also harm quite a bit.
Does it matter on the lates what kind of credit line it is, like a mortgage versus just like a store credit card, or is it the same either way?
Wow, I love that question, actually. No, it doesn't matter. It could be a store credit card or your mortgage, and it absolutely destroys your credit. Now, here's the thing, though, about a mortgage, and I always tell people, halfway joking, but I kind of seriously mean it too, always pay your mortgage payment first. That is so, if you have to sell a kidney, pay your mortgage payment. The reason why is it'll keep you from being able to purchase or get another mortgage in the future. So it's really, really important. And underwriters really look at that heavily. So as far as your scores are concerned, a late is a late. But as far as going through underwriting and trying to maintain another mortgage, that's going to be looked at very harshly with a mortgage company and their underwriters.
Yeah, and listeners may not be hearing this at the time of its original release, but if you are and you're still in a situation with the pandemic where you are struggling financially and you've heard in the news that you can just stop making your mortgage payments, I think Janna will agree with me when I say that that is a really bad idea and you should not do it unless you absolutely have to. And you need to understand that even if you do, and you were told by the government that it will be forgiven or whatever word they chose to use, it is actually still going to affect your, let's say, your loan
Eligibility.
Eligibility, that is the word I want.
Yeah.
Your loan eligibility, because it may not drop your credit score. That may be of what they promised you, but FICO is the one who's going to decide on your home loans. And like, for example, if you are thinking about selling later this year, it may actually prevent you from being able to if you don't stay current on those payments during this time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The other thing that's been absolutely alarming for me and other people that are in the industry and know is how many people feel like, even with like a forbearance, they're just like, okay, this is great. This will save me a little bit of money. I can put my mortgage payment on hold for 3 months. What they don't understand, first of all, if you have to do that, it's understandable. And that's the reason why that program's out there. If you don't have to do that, it is a terrible decision, because basically what's happening is you may not pay your mortgage payment for 3 months, but on that 4th month, not only do you owe your mortgage payment for that 4th month, you also at the same time owe for month 1, 2, and 3. And if you're running into financial distress, if you're struggling coming up with 1 house payment, how are you going to come up with 4? So it's really unfortunate the way people are just reading headlines and just taking that and running with it without understanding or talking to a true professional. So it's really important that people keep informed right now more than ever.
For sure. Well, let's shift back to our questions about our crash course in credit. What would be some things that we could do that would boost our scores?
So a few things that you can do to boost scores is number one, like we were talking about just a moment ago, paying down those credit card balances and keeping them low. And like I said before, like 30 to 60 days before you go in to apply for a loan, get those credit cards paid down as low as possible. The other thing that you can do if you're trying to boost your scores or build a credit profile on your own is you can always sign up to be an authorized user on someone else's cards. Now, hear me out with that. Underwriting, if you're trying to get a mortgage, is not going to look if you're an authorized user and that be the end all be all. Oh, great. You're signed up as an authorized user on someone else's credit card. That isn't showing that you are financially responsible. But what it is it's a great stepping stone in order to start building your own credit, improve your credit worthiness. So that's another thing that you can do. The other thing that raises credit scores is making sure that you don't have any collections on your credit report. And if you do, taking care of them. And you know what? I am so glad I just thought of this too. One of the things that we talked about, what lower scores, believe it or not, paying a collection that's on your credit report will most likely, and 99% of the time, lower your scores, not help them. Wow. And I know that's really like mind-blowing to so many people, but we see it over and over. And the reason why, not to get into too much depth unless you want me to, what happens is when someone pays a collection, let's say they have a 2-year-old medical collection on their credit report. If they pay that off today, what they've done is now they've changed the last date of activity and date reported from a 2-year-old collection to today's date. So when you pay a collection that's showing up on your credit report, it doesn't remove it from the credit report. It just states that it's paid instead of being unpaid. Yeah. So a lot of people don't know that. And so we'll see that as well. When someone's trying to boost their scores, they'll go and pay a bunch of collections off. So that's a terrible way to do it. There's a way to remove collections from the credit report as if it never existed. And a lot of medical collections is notorious for being reported in error. In fact, 79% of all credit reports contain errors. In the quest to raise credit scores, removing a collection from a credit report is a fantastic way to get your points back. It's kind of like that teeter-totter. but doing it the right way is absolutely vital, or you can and will destroy your credit score.
Wow. Well, that's good to know. I hadn't heard that statistic. 79% have an error. And I
Yeah.
think what's bad is people don't know that there's people out there that are willing to help them. And so I think it's important, especially during divorce, that a person get connected with someone like you so that they can make sure that they really truly understand what is on their actual credit report and how that is going to affect them. And that's my last question for you in the crash course is what is at risk when you have a lower credit score than you realized?
So basically what happens is when you have a low credit score, and in low credit scores, there could be multiple things going on. It could be that you just don't simply have enough credit established. People who don't have credit established, you'll see have very low scores because the only way you're going to be able to get a score is to have positive lines of credit. Mm-hmm. So that you need to be able to build your own credit profile. Another good rule of thumb too is that if your goal is to have about 3, preferably 4 trade lines. And when I say trade lines, I mean credit cards and installment loans. And installment loans are going to be an auto loan, home loan, or personal loan. So if you're just getting into the home buying process, it's okay to go ahead and just have 2 credit cards and 1 installment loan. Let's say you have a car payment that you pay on every month. And then that home would be that 4th credit profile. But if you have low scores and you don't have those stair steps, like those credit cards or maybe that car loan, you're not going to be able to get a home loan and you'll have very low FICO scores. Or let's say that you have FICO scores, you're getting approved, but you have low FICO scores. Now you're paying the highest interest rates on the market. So what that means is you're paying your payments every month is going more towards interest rather than principal. So you buy less of a house and so on and so forth. So it's really important that people know what's on their credit and that they have that good thick credit profile. The other thing having low credit scores do is now you're going to be paying higher insurance rates. A lot of people don't know that. You usually have to put on a deposit down if you're paying for utilities or you're getting a cell phone or anything like that. So it's really, really important before you do anything when you're going through a divorce. And I made this mistake because I was very, again, naive. Have your credit intact. That's so important. And have money saved too.
Yeah, of course. So it sounds like bad credit just kind of equals less money in your pocket ultimately.
Absolutely.
Consider all the costs.
And you're paying so much more for everything.
Right. So from what I gather, divorce alone doesn't necessarily hurt your credit, the actual act of severing a marriage, but it's what happens before and after that is inevitably going to affect your credit. And you can make that for the good. And so we want would you say early on in the divorce process would be a good time for someone to pull a credit report and review what accounts are linked to it?
Oh, absolutely. And, and realistically, if I had a magic wand and it would be ideal, they would start pulling and watching their credit about a year before they actually make the move. And the reason why I'm saying that is because unless they already have credit established in their own name, not them and their husbands, but in their own name, if they have that, then they have a lot of the big piece of surviving a divorce financially already taken care of. But if not, credit history is so important. So the longer you have a trade line, the better your FICO scores are going to be. So I would definitely say a year, but for sure, if they don't have that luxury, watching your credit score before, during, and after your divorce is absolutely vital. And I don't see how anyone could do anything other than that. Now, I will say, when we say watch your credit, if you're going to a lender every month and they're pulling your actual FICO scores, it can, in fact, at some point start damaging your scores from getting your credit pulled so much. Yes.
And so that brings up my next question is whether people can really monitor their credit on their own well without hurting it. And how do you advise they go about keeping an eye on things?
So you don't want to get your actual FICO scores pulled more than 10 times in a 12-month period. If you do, it actually starts lowering your scores, and it's a percentage of your actual FICO score that is impacted. Now, what I would suggest doing is you can get your scores online, quote unquote. Now, be very realistic and aware that, number one, the scores that you find online are not your actual FICO scores. They're called Vantage scores. And so they tend to be higher than what your actual FICO scores are going to be. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is just like any other industry, You have good ones and you have bad ones. So I don't want to nitpick at anybody, but there's certain credit monitoring companies that just do an atrocious job and really set, I feel like, consumers in a disadvantage because they feel like their scores are much higher than what they actually are. But there are some actually good ones that you don't pay an arm and a leg. You get all 3 bureaus, and you can pull that report every 30 days, and it's not going to damage your scores. Now, again, primarily what you're paying attention to is the body of the report. What's on there? What's negative? What's positive? Do you need to get a few more trade lines? Is maybe the soon-to-be ex's account on your account that isn't supposed to be? So on and so forth. But just be very educated and aware that those are not your actual FICO scores.
Well, I know right now, through April 2021, I've heard anyway, that people can pull their credit report for free on a weekly basis at annualcreditreport.com. Now, I'm curious from your expert opinion, is that one of the good ones or bad ones? If just starting, maybe they haven't even filed yet. They just want to get an idea.
It's definitely decent for sure. I would say that that's one of the better ones. I like Identity IQ as well. That's a really good one. There's a few that I don't like at all, but those two I think are definitely, they give you the amount of information that you need, and they're going to give you an all-around view of your credit with all 3 credit reports.
At one point, you and I spoke with your partner, Paige, about a site that maybe you guys host or recommend that does this type of credit monitoring. What is that?
It's Identity IQ, and I can actually send you the link. It's a pretty long link.
What we usually do with resources like that is just link them in the episode description so people can grab them easy. So we'll do that for that.
Perfect.
And another credit protection recommendation that I've heard is to separate accounts as quickly as possible. Obviously, to some degree, this is a legal, possibly strategic decision that should be made with your attorney because it affects the overall strategy of resolving matters between you and your soon-to-be ex as equitably and affably as possible. However, what is important that we want to know here is that divorce in and of itself does not free you from financial responsibility in a joint contract, be it a credit card or a bank loan, a mortgage, whatever. You are both on the hook for that entire debt, and that collector or that creditor will come after both of you to the fullest extent of the law to collect that full debt. So the best way to think of this is that I think we kind of tend to think of it like 50-50, but that's not the way the creditors look at it. They consider each of you 100% liable for the full amount. So in other words, they don't care where they get their money. Part of the attorney's job, a big part, in fact, is helping you to make sense of the big picture of all the assets and all the debts, and to come up with an equitable division that is taking everything into consideration. But you can help yourself a lot by tracking your report to make certain that all debts are entered into that equation appropriately. Nothing is forgotten. Separating accounts will, in many cases, necessitate the closure of some joint accounts, and your credit can take a temporary hit for that. But it's often inevitable and necessary for your overall long-term credit protection. So when it happens, what you want to do is just monitor your report to see that each of those accounts is coming off in a timely manner. And Janna, that being the case, their score will likely come back up once they open new individual accounts and begin to make several consistent on-time payments. Is that correct?
That is correct. As long as everything's being taken care of on the other side, like let's say that there is a joint account, that they still have, there's still an amount that needs to be paid down. As long as those are being taken care of and your new accounts are starting to be established, you should be okay. What I would actually recommend is, again, we had that magic wand that someone had 12 months. And really, I think one of the things that people get caught up in when they're going through divorce is they feel like it has to be done right then. And I know that there are some cases, if someone is in physical danger, that I am not talking to you right now.
Yes,
if you are in physical danger, you get out as soon as possible, and you get the support to surround you that you need so that you don't go back in that abusive relationship. So that's not who I'm talking to right now. I'm talking to the people that they feel like the best thing for them is to go ahead and go through a divorce, take your time, get things established, put money away, start establishing your own credit. Immediately, go out and get credit cards in your own name. I would suggest getting 2. While you have other credit established, if it's still in good standing, you're going to be able to get approved for a credit card with a higher limit. That way you're not having to do something like a secure credit card, which if there's some listeners that aren't sure what that is, basically what you're doing is you're securing or you're backing your own self. So you put, let's say $300 down, and now you have a credit card that has a limit of $300.
Yeah.
So, but if you have credit established with your soon to be ex and you're in good standing, that's a great time to go ahead and start establishing your own lines of credit. Another thing that you can do is get a CD credit builder loan, and that's going to count as that installment piece. It's really important to have a good mix of credit. If you only have credit cards or you only have installment loans, and if we remember, an installment loan is going to be a personal loan, home loan, or auto loan. If you only have one of the two, your scores are actually going to be 10% lower than what they could be. So having a good, healthy mix is really important. So if you're not ready to go out and get your own car loan, or obviously you can't purchase a home when you're married without the spouse's name on it as well, like at least on the title or deed or however that works. And you could probably speak to that more. But a CD credit builder loan is a great way to start because you're basically getting an installment line of credit on your credit report, but it's a savings account essentially. Several local banks offer that. And so if you have a bank account with someone, your local bank, I would go in there and talk to them about their options. And if they don't have that available, a lot of times they can direct you to who does. Or even on our website, we have some avenues that people can apply for a CD credit builder loan. So that's really important to get your credit established while you have time. And then that way, by the time you do go through the divorce, you already have, let's say, 5 to 6 months and even a year worth of credit, and you're really not going to get that hard hit like you normally do. And then you obviously are working on removing yourself from those joint accounts.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And in fact, in a previous episode with an attorney, we kind of talked a little bit about this very thing of the preparation. And I actually linked in that episode to a tool that can be downloaded that is more or less a checklist of exit strategy tips with things like that. Because in some situations, you know, as you mentioned, there's danger and physical safety involved. And in other situations, it's more of an emotional safety issue. Correct. And a financial insecurity issue. And it is very wise in those instances for that person to take several months, if possible, and do some planning. Get credit in your own name, get your own bank account, use a PO box to get all of this information directed to so that it's private, changing passwords, you know, just there's a very long list of things that can be done to make sure that you don't leave the marriage in dire straits. And so if that is you and those sound like things you need to look back into that episode with attorney Abraham Poole and find that resource, because that will be very helpful for you right now.
Today's episode is sponsored by Rescore, a woman-owned credit repair company you can trust. Other credit companies I've referred to in the past promised high and delivered low for my clients. Rescore only charges for results. There's never a contract or monthly fee, and they're partnered with an attorney to represent you if required. It's evident Rescore cares about people, and they communicate it in everything they do. Whether you want to purchase a new home, a new car, refinance student loans, need credible debt consolidation, or you just need to raise your score for your personal or business credit, you will find Janna Fox and Paige White and their entire staff to be knowledgeable, non-judgmental, and creative in getting results, even when you might have thought your situation was hopeless. They truly are changing people's lives by changing their credit score. Empower your life. Call Rescore at 855-273-7267 or visit rescoreyourlife.com. Please tell them you heard about Rescore on Starting Over Stronger. Now back to the show.
Annie, I love that you have that resource and just something that they can download, because I think so many times, and it's what I said before, is that you don't even know what you don't know. And no one would ever think about jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. Yes. Or even if they did have it, they've never went through any type of training or preparation or watching videos or having an instructor. You would never do that. Getting divorced is not a breakup. It's a legal binding contract that you are breaking. It is a death of a marriage, sometimes of a family, what have you. And so just as you would never jump out of an airplane without being prepared and having coaches and training and, all of these things, you should never, ever again, unless it's abusive, you should never go through this blindly just because you're emotional. And I get it. I've been there, but it's so important that you've prepared. You're talking to professionals. You're talking to coaches. You know the ups and downs of it, and you do everything to avoid the complete financial disaster that happens so many times. And it is sad how many people come to us after the fact, really trying to get their credit cleaned up. And there's some things that is just, it's just time on the clock. It's not something I can just remove from a credit report. It's literally time on the clock, and they're trying to get a home for their family, or let's even say they're trying to rent something and they're unable to. So it's very vital that put the emotions aside if we can, and look at it practically. And you really have to do that when you're going through a divorce. You have to readjust your way of thinking. And I'm not saying shut down emotionally, but I'm saying get the emotional decision making as far from you as you can, and start looking at like a practical matter.
Absolutely, for sure. And one benefit of credit monitoring while you're still sharing those joint accounts is that you are being notified immediately if any, shall we say, unexpected or unusually large or frequent charges begin to appear without your consent.
Yep.
And so if that happens, absolutely notify your attorney immediately, supply him with the necessary documentation. You could also download all your monthly or annual debit or credit card statements to skim and search of recurring charges like subscriptions that will need to be canceled or redirected. And Janna, in addition to these steps, would you think it would be important to contact creditors to let them know of the change in marital status, even if it's not final yet? I'm curious if you've seen incidents where failure to alert credit authorities has come back to haunt someone or harm their credit or financial security?
Yeah, that's a great question. In any situation I found in life, communication is key. So as long as you're calling the creditors and letting them know that, now that doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, you can't call, let's say, Capital One credit card and talk to the lady on the phone and just say, this isn't fair. We have a joint credit card. He's not paying it. I don't have the money. And then you're off the hook.
Right.
So, but what it is it's communication. It's coming up with a plan together, and it's navigating that situation. And here's the bottom line, and it's not fun. If you're on a credit card or a home loan or a car loan and it's joint, at the end of the day, the credit bureaus, FICO, and everyone else does not care what happens romantically. So you are absolutely on the hook for that. So if that means you have to put extra money away to pay, and it's not fair and it's not fun, but you have to pay those credit card balances because the soon-to-be ex is not, that, and it may be hard, and I know that's it's tough to hear, but you're going to need to go ahead and get those paid as much as possible. Now, obviously, it's ideal that they're doing their half and being responsible. Yeah. Let's talk to the ones that they're not in that situation. To protect yourself, do everything you can to keep those balances paid down and walk away from that joint account as soon as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how you might say is best for clients to deal with joint debts as far as credit protection goes, but obviously it's going to be one of those things that isn't always fair in the end because, you've got a payment due and you're weeks away from the divorce being final and your soon-to-be ex isn't going to pay it because he thinks you owe it or she thinks you owe it.
Yeah.
And, and even if you don't, it may be in your best interest to settle that and get it so there isn't a late payment that's going to affect your credit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the thing that I can say this because I went through it, but so many times I hear, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. It really isn't. It is not fair. And you are absolutely right. And it's hurtful and it's hard. But just because something's hard doesn't mean that it's impossible. So when you are determined, and again, we're putting on our practical hat, not our emotional hat, you have to keep in mind, like you always say, Annie, and I love this statement, is that the end of the day, your biggest asset is your credit and your credit score. Yeah. Absolutely. So you have to be able to do that to protect yourself and your family.
I wish I could say I came up with that on my own, but
well, I'm going to give you credit.
It came from my training. But anyway, it just is, it is what it is, and it absolutely isn't fair. And it's one of the things I say probably as often as anything else, but letting the creditors know is an important step. And I can give you some examples as to why. And it can be, when I say creditors, I'm not just talking about credit cards.
Oh,
I'm
no.
talking about not only your mortgage loan, of course, your landlord, of course. I'm talking about even your phone company, the utility companies. I have seen, and let's just say maybe personally experienced, where one party will just suddenly cut you off on one of those things that you need.
Yes.
And so you've got to be ahead of it as much as you can in just letting them know about the situation, because what happens, and that even goes down to insurance. I remember calling my insurance company wanting to get a quote for what my car would be if it was just me on it. And the lady said, "Oh, are you guys in the process of divorce?" And I was like, "Yes." And she said, "Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we need to make a note of that, because now we will not let either party make any changes to the policy without this consent of the other." And so in every way you can, that's really what I'm getting at, is letting anybody that you pay money to on a regular basis know that this is happening.
Yes. And even like, it's things that you don't even think about, as well as like your utilities. So let's say that you and your soon-to-be ex is on the electric bill, and you guys have made a verbal agreement between the two of you, when you're going through the stages of, oh, let's not destroy each other's lives, let's stay friends, blah, blah, blah. And then reality hits. So many times you go to, you finally get a place you can afford, you go find a rental, you try to get your electric set up, and you guys have a past due balance of $1,500. I'm being very specific, aren't I? So you might, I just realized
I wonder
that.
where you got those numbers.
But and then it keeps you from being able, unless you have that $1,500. And again, it's not fair and it's not fun, but it's the reality. And now you don't have electricity for you and your offspring, or just you, because you have to pay this bill. So it's crazy, the amounts of the huge dollar amounts that add up after $100, $200, $300, and that's where that preparation comes in.
And so getting debts in their own name, wherever possible, whenever possible, is important. And, as insensitive as it may sound, I say do not trust your soon-to-be ex to make all the payments on time on the joint accounts that your name is on, without your ability to check and make sure it is happening. Because intentionally or not, there's a lot going on, and we are not thinking clearly. And even our soon-to-be ex is not thinking clearly. And so that's why people need to know that their credit can be greatly harmed with some seemingly small irresponsibilities during the divorce before the accounts get severed. And you mentioned this earlier, so I guess it's more commonly known than I even realized, but I've seen a report with FICO where they state that a single late mortgage payment can drop your score as much as 100 points that will not recover for as much as 2 years.
Correct.
And so, what does that affect? Well, you're getting ready to move out. Maybe not. Maybe you're going to refinance the house. What effect is it going to have on either of those scenarios?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And this is the thing that I think, it breaks my heart when I hear this, but we will have potential clients give us a call. And what has happened is, in the divorce decree, they have stated that they can, Mrs. So-and-so can keep the home, and she needs to refinance within 12 months. In the mess of the divorce, things happen where, let's say, something simple that you're not even thinking about, your gas bill or electric bill or water bill has gone into collection status, and that is when it's reported on your credit report. So paying your electric bill, gas bill, water bill every month on time is not going to report to your credit report and help you. However, if you don't pay it and it goes into collection status, one collection, brand new collection on your credit report, again, just like that late, can tank your scores 80 to 100 points. And I've seen it over and over again. So what happens is they call us. They have no clue. And again, that's why monitoring your credit is so vital. They have no clue that the water bill or gas bill or electric bill hasn't been paid. And they have no clue that they have a collection. So they feel like they've done everything correct. And then they go and they talk to a lender and they're saying, hey, you know what? You're at a 580. And they're, how is this true? I was at a 700. I know I was, and I pay everything on time. Well, because of this collection that popped up. So really just knowing what's going on your credit report is so vital. and just keeping an eye on it. And again, like you had said, communication, where you're making sure if there's an outstanding bill on any of those utilities or anything, you're calling those companies. Hey, is that paid? Is that paid? I actually have a dear friend of mine talking about the not fair, and just a real life example. She had an ex that had a substance abuse problem, unbeknownst to her. And it was just getting out of control, and he was acting odd and all these type of things. So she finally, realized what was going on and realized that just things were not going well, and she needed to get out sooner than later because they were just getting out of control. Well, anyway, the long and short of that is this lady ended up with $27,000 worth of credit card debt within a short amount of time because of the substance abuse problem. And she was left, it was a joint account, and she was left to pay that herself. What she ended up doing is she got a second job. She waitressed in the evenings and on the weekends and had her job. And was she exhausted? Absolutely. And was she mad? Absolutely. And she was hurt. However, she was smart enough to realize how important it was that she maintained her credit integrity. And she did that, and he didn't pay a dime towards it. Now it's 5 years later with her, and she's always just I'm just like, girl, you just handled that with just such dignity. And she did, and she paid that off, but she didn't do that. I mean, she kind of did when we were talking alone, but it's not fair and calling the credit. I mean, he's the one who spent all the money. She knew that she was a joint, and what joint means is she's 100% responsible.
Yeah, that's a big example, but I got an even bigger one for you of a woman who divorced. And during the course of the divorce, actually, the attorney was on top of it. They discovered a home equity line of credit. And this was in, I think, California. So we're talking about much bigger lines of credit than the Midwest. But they had, I believe it was a $300,000 line of credit. And so as part of the divorce, they zeroed that balance out through the marital balance and marital settlement, and she went on with her life, thought all was well, kept the house, went to actually change residences about 2 years later, I think it was, and was denied a mortgage loan because of a home equity line of credit that I guess she assumed, or somebody assumed, that zeroing it out was the same as closing it. But in fact, it wasn't. And the ex was using it like an ATM for the last 2 or 3 years.
No.
And she now has to hire an attorney to try to get him to pay that because it's in her name as well. So if she wants to move, that's her choice. Either sue him or pay it. And it was a very, very large amount of money. I can't even remember how much now, but that's how important severing these accounts can be.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and some divorces are more contentious than others. And for everyone that these steps may not even be a big issue, there are just as many that could become vindictive and intentionally open or close accounts without your consent.
Yes, especially if they know your social security number.
Yeah, for the exact reason of harming you financially and destroying your credit as a result. And you can actually take a big step to avoid this, and that is to freeze or lock your credit report. And I'm wondering what advice you would have to offer on that during the divorce process.
Yeah, I really like that question. I get asked that quite a bit, if I think that it is beneficial to freeze or block your credit report. So this is what I would say. If you are in a situation that is volatile, you know that soon-to-be ex has a capability, like has your social security number, would open something up in your line of credit, or let's say that you are monitoring your credit and you notice that they have opened up one account, I would say then do it. But overall, just like being the first plan of action to do, I don't know if I would necessarily say like, yes, do that right away, just because you're going to need to establish your own lines of credit. And it really does make a lot of hurdles and hiccups when you're trying to do that, proving that you're really you and things like that. So if you do have to do that, understand and do not get upset with the person on the other end of the phone or whatever, when there are a lot of hurdles and it's hard for you to establish that you are who you are, but they're doing that to protect you. So I think if you go in with eyes wide open and understanding what you're really doing, and if it's necessary, yes, do it.
Okay. Well, as someone nears the end of their divorce, they're undoubtedly in the throes of adjusting to a new lifestyle, a new, probably greatly reduced income. Would you share some thoughts on having a solid spending plan? You know, we all hate the B word, budget. But yet how they can most easily accomplish that with the end goal of not only more financial stability and peace of mind, but credit protection specifically, as well as just learning to cover all of their primary expenses with their own personal income, if possible, and not their alimony or maintenance or child support at the risk of sounding like Dave Ramsey. Budgets can feel very, very limiting, but they actually kind of set you free in some pretty amazing ways. Would you agree? And what would you add?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that because here's the thing, and honestly, I'll be very wrong real with you. I cannot stand like the budgets and the Excel sheets and all this kind of stuff and like sitting down and typing in every single month, like my electric bill is this much, my car. I'm not good at that stuff. So I understand when I talk to someone that I'm trying to coach and get in a better situation when they're like, no, I can't do the budget. Cause it's just such an ugly word, isn't it? I mean, there's like,
Yes.
I think 2% of the population that love them. And I mean, and good for them, good for them. But I mean, I'm the norm that just can't stand it. So while I was doing research and trying to figure out what can I do that I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, I have a lot of kids to pay for. And as anybody that has kids, they know how expensive they are. So I felt like, or I didn't feel like I was living literally paycheck to paycheck. And it seemed no matter how much money I made, that's what was happening. Well, the reason why is because I wasn't budgeting. So at the end of the day, it's a necessary evil. Here is a very, very easy budgeting plan. And there's a lot of different budgets out there. So find one that works for you. This is the one that I found that worked for me and a lot of my clients. It's the 50-30-20 budget. I actually wrote a blog about it. What it is the amount of money that you bring home. You take 50%, and that is allotted to all of your absolute needs and living expenses. So that's going to be rent/mortgage. It's going to be all your utilities, your car payment, your car insurance, health insurance, all of the things that are absolutely need. You can even throw in, your kids' braces, contact, things like that. Okay. So 50% is allotted to that. Then 30% is your extras. So let's say you need, hairspray, or you like a certain type of foundations. It's a little more expensive than others, or you get your hair colored, or you want shoes, or little Johnny, your kiddo, wants an extra jacket, but he already has one. These are just the wants. And a lot of times where people make the mistake on their budgets is they forget to put the wants, and they strain themselves or handcuff themselves. That's what my issue always was. And so they don't stick with it. And then they feel so overwhelmed that they just quit doing it altogether. So having that 30% of those wants and just being able to buy that birthday present, and things like that, that's going to be in the wants category. And then 20% goes into savings. Savings is so very, very vital and important. I can't stress that enough. And especially going through this COVID-19 experience, the people that are staying afloat and not getting like damaged financially is the ones who saved. And when you save, that's what's going to keep you from getting through a lot of these pitfalls. So if you can save 20%, and what I would recommend doing is your first goal would be to save $1,000, and that's like your emergency budget. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this before, but you do that. And then you really honestly want to save enough in case something does happen. And this is more relevant now than it ever has been, because I think before, we're like, oh, just in case something happens. With COVID-19 going on, we really have gone, what is it, like almost 90 days, or maybe I just feel like that, but it's going to probably be about a 90-day stretch. But make sure that you have enough to cover all of your bills and food and things like that for 90 days. And then after that, that 20% goes towards, you can do things like investing, or, getting a hold of someone that knows what they're doing that can help you with that money. But that 50-30-20% rule is fantastic. Now, if you're in a situation that you're thinking about getting divorced and you have a little bit of money right now, save more than that. Don't be like, oh, I'm just going to save, 20%, especially if you have someone that's paying the majority of the bills and you're going to need to save. I'm telling you, save as much as possible. The more you have in your savings and money backing you up, the less pitfalls you're going to have, and the more secure you're going to feel, and the less likely you are to jump back into a negative situation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're right. Saving is absolutely critical. And, I know nobody likes the word budget, so I like to call it a spending plan because it has the word spending in it.
Yeah. I like that.
And and yeah, you got to have some flexibility in it. The thing is, you're right. The times we're living in now, I think before now, everybody thought all those Dave Ramsey people were crazy, but we're not looking as stupid right now. We're not that I'm not saying anybody's stupid if they didn't save. I'm just saying, like, it probably looked like overkill before.
Oh, absolutely.
And now we're realizing that there's a very real reason for the importance of saving. And I think the truth is that for most Americans, we could be saving at least double, if not triple, what we are, with just some very minor changes in our,
I agree with you.
in our budget. And it isn't as limiting as,
No,
because
it's not.
the thing is, you have a goal. You've set a goal. And when you're working toward a goal, that in and of itself feels more free and more positive, I guess. So,
You know what? I'm glad you just said that, because so many times too, and again, I've walked that walk, so I can say it. I think one of the things that happen when someone's going through a divorce is so many times you feel powerless, and then you start making powerless decisions, and then powerless decisions end up with really negative consequences. So just saying that, like, when you are saving, it really does give you your power back. So it's like, it's empowering your life. And the whole thing about Rescore is like, our whole thing is like empowering your life again, and taking responsibility for your own life and your own well-being, and not being a bag in the wind, not letting life happen to you, but you are navigating life the way you want it to go, even in those tough times. And the reason why that 50-30-20 budget that I'm fond of, and it doesn't mean it's the end all be all, but the reason why I'm fond of it is because it doesn't matter if you're making $7 an hour or $57 an hour. It works. And it also kind of keeps a realm of what can you honestly afford? Because one of the things that I struggled with, and I don't know if you went through this, but when you're married, you have two incomes sometimes. Now, like with me, I was a stay-home mom for a long time, and I worked here and there, but my main priority was the kids. At one point in my life, like, my biggest decisions were like if I should make chicken or pork chops, but my ex made a decent amount of money. But when I went out on my own, I didn't have anything. But what had happened is I lived in a decent home. I drove decent cars. I was able to go to the grocery store and get name brand items if I wanted to, so on and so forth. Right. Trying to scale back, like even when I was looking at rental properties, the difference in what I was originally looking for and what I ended up with was a far cry from each other. So just trying to realize what true needs and wants are, but having that ability, like, does this fit in my 50%? Will I be able to still, buy my kid a birthday present and things like that? Because there was a time in my life, I'm not joking, if someone would have said, hey, this is $10, I would be like, what's the monthlies look like on that? Because I couldn't afford it. But I had stretched myself out, because the rental property that I had, I don't want to say unrealistic expectations, but I was used to a certain thing. And it wasn't great by any means, but it was more, honestly, if I'm realistic, it was more than what I could afford.
Right. Well, you're right about that. And it's funny that you would mention empowerment, because that kind of leads into our next question. What I think happens is that we all have the idea that having to transition into a more humble lifestyle after divorce is a bad thing. But I think that what we need to do is reframe that, because I honestly believe that humility is not disempowering. It's actually very empowering to realize that we can live on so much less, and that we can find so much more peace without all of that sometimes.
I agree. Yes.
And so,
yes.
Yeah. And so as people think about, maybe they're going through this divorce, they're thinking about all this, downsizing that they're going to have to do. And maybe they've started looking at their credit report. They have an idea about the things that we've been talking about. And they know there are collections on there. They know there are significant issues on their report. What would be, do you think, the best time for someone to engage with someone like you to start resolving those issues? Should they do it before, during, or after the divorce?
As soon as they know there's a problem, they need to reach out to somebody for sure, because timing is so very, very vital and important. So the moment that they sniff any type of issue, get a hold of a professional. And the thing that I want to say too is, when you are looking at different credit repair companies, it is very important that you know what you're looking for. You want to make sure that they're not putting you on a month-to-month plan. And what I mean by that is the credit repair companies that put you like, okay, great. You're going to pay $99 to $150 a month, depending on the program that you sign up for, regardless if something comes off your credit report or not. Just as a business sense, what you're doing is you're paying their payroll. So it's actually better for them if they drag out the process, because now you're paying more. So a lot of times they think, oh, well, that I can afford that, $150 a month. But at the end of the day, when you've drag it out, or they've drag it out rather, for 10, 11, 12 months, look at the amount of money you've actually spent. And that's just hoping something will be removed. So it's very important that you work with a credit repair company that only charges for the negative items removed from the credit report. There's little to no risk doing that, because if they can't remove something, they're not going to charge you. The other piece is working with a credit repair company that has some type of attorney backing. So if push comes to shove with these collection companies and credit bureaus, and remember, 79% of all credit reports contain errors. So what that is realistically is, the audience listening, 79% of them have errors on their credit report and don't even realize it. Yeah. So it's important that you have that attorney backing, because by law, credit reports have to be timely, accurate, and verifiable. And when they're not, that attorney can do something about it. Now, actually, truth be known, a credit repair company can do less than what a consumer can on their own, unless they have that attorney piece. So it's really important. So even if, people don't turn to Rescore for help, make sure that you do your homework, because there's a lot of credit repair companies out there, unfortunately, that overpromise and underdeliver. And I don't want to talk bad about anybody. I want everyone's business to thrive. I also want consumers to be very knowledgeable and know what to look for. The other thing is, they want to make sure that the credit repair company isn't just charging them to charge them. There's sometimes the collection is on a credit report, but it's older and it really isn't harming the scores anymore. So when you're trying to save money, you want to go after those things that are really, truly harming the scores, not just trying to bleed money out of somebody that is trying to better their life. So that's also very important. So definitely do their research. Don't just hear a commercial or anything like that. Know what they're stepping into.
Awesome. Well, I think that helps a lot, because I think there's a cloud of knowledge around credit repair, and just not really knowing what happens, I guess, when you call somebody for credit repair. I think a lot of the people that I talk to, that's like my first step. They want to know if maybe they can get some down payment assistance, or some, help in closing, or whatever, to buy a house. And, and then they say, oh, but my credit's like, 580. And I'm like, well, maybe we can get you qualified for a home loan now, but you're going to probably pay a lot more right now than if you've got somewhere to stay for another, even 6 months, and get connected with credit repair. And I sometimes kind of get a feeling from people like, yeah, that's expensive, I don't want to do that. And so I think it's really helpful for them to know just those three main things. Don't ever pay anybody a monthly fee, and without any, kind of a contract that's going to protect you to actually get results. Make sure it's attorney backed, and make sure that it's a targeted approach, because there are specific things that we can do that we know are going to have a more positive effect on the credit than others. So why are we wasting our time on little nickel and dime things when we can make a big difference that will allow them to get into a home 3 months sooner, or what have you?
You're exactly right.
So, well, I really hate to bring this to a close. I know there's so much more we could explore on this subject. And really today we just wanted to kind of touch the surface, define what credit is and what credit repair is, and talk about some of the really important stuff up front. But I wonder if you think your partner, Paige White, is it? Would she be able to come and maybe have a second conversation with us and dive deeper into these issues sometime?
Oh, absolutely. She would love to.
Okay. Well, we'll plan on that. Lastly, one important thing that I would want to do to close out is just to ask you, what do you think is the most important thing for listeners to take away from this conversation today, regardless of where they're at in their divorce process?
Wow, that's a loaded question. You know what? I would say, first of all, everything starts in the mind, right? So we can do all of these things, but if we're not in a good mind frame, it just really dilutes everything. So make sure that you don't allow yourself to get in the victim or the powerless mentality. So that's the first thing. Understand that this is a hassle, not a horror. You can get through it. There's lots of survivors out there. I'm one of them. You're one of them. And it can seem so overwhelming at first. Also, save. Save your money, know what's going on, keep your eyes open. So many times we get frustrated and we're like, you know what, I don't care, I just want out of it. And then we make really rash decisions. So take your time, plan, talk to professionals, save money, and keep an eye on your credit report. And if you need help, go get help with a proper company and know what you're walking into.
Well, thank you again, Janna. I didn't mention it before, but maybe it would encourage listeners to know that you and I first met many years ago when we were both still maybe not so happily married. And our daughters, Gretchen and Courtney, were the best of friends. I think it was something like maybe they were 8 years old at that point. And it just honestly feels like a totally different lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that is really the encouragement, is I want people to know that if they're in the middle of the demise of their marriage or a difficult divorce, or maybe they're even divorced some time ago and they're still struggling to recover, I just want them to take comfort in knowing that you are going to make new connections. You will lose some along the way, but you will reconnect with people from your past who you will discover that you had and have more in common with than you ever realized before. And this is a great big world that we live in, yet it is small enough to really connect with people who matter and to help each other out through the hard times. And as a divorce real estate specialist, I have been sharing in every way I can with people going through divorce and their attorneys the critical nature of credit protection for these survivors, for their financial stability. There just simply are not enough hours in the day or enough people in the field making this consumer protection niche a common and expected practice for people. And I really honestly hope to live to see the day that it is, because I know that it makes that much of a difference. And so I just hope that a lot of people have tuned in today, maybe just when they needed to hear this encouraging and practical information. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Remember, as you continue to dive into these divorce, survival, and recovery topics with me and my expert guests here on the Starting Over Stronger show, the takeaway for every topic is that, like a massive ship on open waters, you can make even a 1-degree turn in your life and your divorce or with your kids, and as a direct result of that slight correction, end up in a totally different destination. There are people and resources who want to be your life preservers during this storm. Reach out. As you think about ways to apply what we talked about today, you may want to check out the resources in today's episode description to connect with Janna or myself for more information about credit or real estate during divorce. You may want to share this podcast with those you know going through divorce. They can pick and choose from the topics of importance to them or listen to them all to find the hidden gems that will help make their divorce more bearable and less devastating. We are here for whatever you need for help during your divorce and hope as you are starting over stronger. See you next time.